to go to politics. I don't know whether it's politics as usual, but this week we had Professor Kivutha Kibwana, the two-time governor for Makueni County, and he actually says he wants to be president. Linus, I'll give you the first take here, because not everybody who declares they want to be president in this country is received warmly, and actually sometimes you get the feeling that not just anybody should declare they want to be president. That's how we have been conditioned to think.
You're very right, Joe. Presidency in Kenya is a club. I think it is a private members club for card-holding members. When you watch our history and how outsiders have been received and treated, you would realize that you have to be somewhere for you to have a realistic chance of becoming president. I watched Kivutha Kibwana sitting on JKL last night and explaining himself. What immediately came to my mind is, when do we do things differently? When do we have platforms that can actually generate a lot of public interest instantly? You see, it'll be interesting to see a time when we have 2 or 3 candidates expressing interest to run for president on the ticket of the ruling party, for example, or the party in government. That has never happened, because we seem to treat, if you are the party leader of a party, then you are the presidential candidate. It shouldn't be the case. And that's how we've been approaching it. One question he could not answer, and it is a question a majority of presidential candidates in this country don't answer, is, what is your philosophy and what is your ideology and which party are you running on? It was disappointing to see Professor Kivutha Kibwana saying there are so many parties. Disappointing, but also it's a statement, a very honest statement about our politics. What is the difference between the parties that exist? It can be any party, I can run in any. That's what Kibwana was saying.
Or probably Gachuri saying that it really doesn't matter what ideology I have, because, I mean, we've seen people run with this party this election, and then the other election comes, no one even remembers that party existed. We've seen that in this country since 1992, when we started having these other parties again, that very few parties actually persist through 2 elections.
Actually, the question should be the political reality versus the ideal situation. Ideally, we should have 2 or 3 political parties, serious ones, that have serious candidates. People compete on the basis of policies, manifesto issues, and if you support candidate A belonging to political party Y, you know what this party stands for, you know what this candidate stands for. And there's a clear separating line between candidate A representing this political party and candidate B fronted by this other political party. Ideally, that should be the situation. But is that what happens in Kenya? I don't think so. You only need to look at what has happened between 1992 and 2017. The political parties that have been crowned the ruling party have been different, save for 92 and 97. All along, we have talked about different political parties. In 2002, 2007, 2013, 2017, we have been governed by 4 different political parties, of 4 coalitions, so to say. And the situation looks like it will continue even in the next election, because we are not yet there. But also, what is as a country, what is our rallying tool? What is our campaign tool? What is our main driving force? Unfortunately, it's one tribe, not necessarily manifesto, not necessarily issues, but this group, this group, this group combine against this group, and this group. We may eventually get there sometime, but we have some journey to cover.
Yvonne, if you're Kivutha Kibwana, and all those things are ranged against you, what do you begin to do, honestly? Or you need anyone else who might want to run for president,
including
Jamila here. I mean, like it looks to me so like it's so fatalistic, like it's a fait accompli. Like just sit back and wait for the card-holding members that Linus was talking about to do their thing and get out.
Or the big tribes. I mean, I think, first of all, for me, it would be interesting to see a time when all of the big political families, to start with, because it's also about, connections and people who have been there. If you take a look at our politics, we've had at least 3 big political families that have dominated our space, I think, since independence. It would be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, the tribe issue aside, which is a big one, and that I do not have the answer for. But it would be interesting to see what our politics would be like without these 3 big families that have dominated our politics. When they eventually, I mean, if you take a look at President Uhuru Kenyatta now and Raila Odinga, from the feud that, their fathers had, love, hate, relationship, this one sacrificed for another, we know what happened with the KPU, that sort of thing. But what will happen when these families eventually retire from the political scene? Because
but
a lot of that, well, look, and this is not anything against them. Everyone has a right to run for office in whatever capacity, regardless of where you come from, whether you're a hustler or a dynasty or whatever. But just interestingly, because everything has been driven by that, the rivalries, the coming together, the falling apart, when NDP joined KANU and then again they went apart, there was a time when, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta were in the same government, then they go apart. There's just, that's another driver of of our politics right now. So just be interesting to see what happens. Who then emerges, sort of finds their way in that space, and what then will be the tone of our politics.
But whose fault is it? Because I look at the 2017, 2013 presidential ballot papers. They had other candidates other than Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga. There were many others. Yet, Kenyans had a choice. But whose fault is it? Is it the electorate's fault or the candidate's fault? Because the candidates will mobilize, the candidates will campaign, they will use their resources, they will use their networks, they'll use state operators where need be. But at the end of the day, you will be required to vote, even though we are told every so often that it is not he who votes, but he who counts who decides the outcome. But the truth is, in that ballot paper, continuously, there have been candidates other than from the main families.
But Gachuri, you have to think about why Kenyans put so much premium, first of all, on the presidency, and secondly, on the ethnic community where they come from. Because historically, these 2 things have meant so much. They've affected people's lives. There are people who have not got certain jobs because they belong to a certain community. There are people who have got jobs because they belong to a certain community. And therefore, there is a sense, however false, that someone who speaks your language needs to be in a certain position for you to get a job or get an opportunity. However misguided that view might be, it actually determines a lot about our politics.
I wanted to add, about that. Was it John Kamau or who did it in the papers? Was it last weekend when they took a look at the backyards of the presidents and found that, the levels of poverty...
it doesn't change a thing,
hasn't changed. In fact, yes, it's even worse. And so I've never understood if we have our man in the presidency, forget even at other levels of leadership, that it'll mean more for us when, if you take a look at all the economic sectors and all of the indicators, you find that the people who are literally in his backyard, the presidents.
Politics is not rational. It is emotional.
It's true. It's not rational. It is emotional. You speak about backyard and whether mtu wetu akiwa pale, because that's how we've been conditioned as Kenyans, that if someone who speaks my language is there, it a trickle down to atufikia sisi wote. And it's not only Kivutha Kibwana who has declared interest. We have Alfred Mutua who also declared interest. We've had Hassan Joe saying that he wants to run. We even had the chair of the Council of Governors, the governor of Kakamega, also saying that he would be interested to run for the presidency. But then I look at all those other governors who are in their second term. There are about 20 plus of them. And we say this before, kama ushaonja hiyo power ni ngumu sana to let it go. But according to the constitution, you can only run 2 terms as governor, the same as president, and you need to go home. So what are all these gentlemen looking at? Where would they go next? Some of them probably are looking to be running mates to someone. Some have declared that they want to run for president. There are those who have said that they want to run as senators or members of parliament come the next elections. But there are those now who are supporting the BBI, hoping that whatever constitutional changes that will come with it will expand the executive, and they'll somehow find somewhere to land. And there are those who want to be on the right side come the next general elections, so that in case whoever they support ends up in power, they'll land some plum job in government. We've seen governors who had lost in the previous elections getting jobs. For example, C.S. Munya, he's now a minister. We have Ukur Yatani, who was the governor of Marsabit, is now the minister in a very powerful docket. We have some who have been made CASs, with the former governor of Tana River, Godana, I think he's in the Ministry of Interior. So I think for a lot of these governors, yes, they want to run for the presidency, maybe for the right reasons, but also they need to look at now what next. Because
Raise
I think the
profile.
next, yes, that's your profile, because the next position after governor that is powerful enough for that profile is president. But you all cannot be president.
Let's speak a little bit about Kiunjuri before we go to the last bit.
Okay, before I say anything about Kiunjuri, Joe, allow me, because at some point, Jamila and I thought maybe the big families in terms of this show are on that end of the room. Because for a while, we were not having a say.
See what you've done there.
Yes, but
We have not started talking about pastoralist, but I will not go there.
You see. Now, I think there are 2 issues, really, and Francis, you asked a pertinent question. Whose fault is it? It's the fault of what we can call the bias system that works in a certain way. You know, right now we have this global consciousness on racism and how the American system was created in a way that it's biased to the black people. The Kenyan state system is created in a way that is biased towards, and in fact in favor of the people you're calling big families, the people you're calling elite.
Big tribes, yeah.
Because look at the conversations we have around elections. Why should it be important to know who will be the chief of general staff, or rather, we've changed the name these days to chief of defense forces. Why should it matter who the chief justice of the republic will be in the time of the election? Why should it matter who sits in the Judicial Service Commission because on the time of the election? It's because of one thing. It's because we don't really use elections as ways of creating governments and creating leadership transitions from one leader to another. That is why you see the kind of helplessness that we see displayed by leaders who are actually potentially capable of running their own agenda, but they have to bend their backs. And Yvonne, you saw the Western Kenya leaders yesterday in Harambee House. You know, that's a region that has a lot of
Okay, but I don't even know why that
voters.
question was directed at me.
Voters. I
But
think
it's fine,
we
I'll
need to do a
take
bit
it.
of regional profiling
I'll
in,
take it.
in the show here because of regional
Matole
knowledge.
is not from Western, but anyway.
There is a certain helplessness
Yeah.
among the leaders that come from different regions and the populations that they lead. They do not feel they can actually make it on their own. Yeah. And I don't understand that helplessness. I can only explain it on the issue of elections. Because if people knew that they can actually hold a free and fair election and get elected president and get elected governor, then they'll not be this helpless. Our democracy has not reached that stage yet, where you know very well you can trust the ballot. You can't trust the ballot here because you don't know. You may know what goes in, but you may not know what comes out of it. And I want to give an illustration, just a few illustrations. One is the movement by the French president called En Marche, and you can correct me for the French pronunciation. President Macron. Macron decided to separate with the party that he was serving as finance minister and led a movement and went and spoke to the voters.
Yeah.
And every vote was counted. And that's how he came to power. He won the majority of seats again in the House. In Ukraine, we had a comedian. This is the equivalent of Churchill becoming president. First elected office to hold is the presidency.
Right, he didn't rise up the ranks from MCA all the way.
Not at all. He just spoke to the voters and told them, we need to fix this thing. And that is where Kenyans should actually start thinking. Madagascar got a DJ, first election as well, and became president. The problem is in our elections. We don't trust our elections because we've proved them, and in 2017, the Supreme Court did a fantastic job in showing us how we've been doing these things. We don't do elections. We do selections. We mess up with systems, and we know the outcome way before it happens, which is why I feel for Kivutha Kibwana, Mwangi Kiunjuri, party leader. I want to assume that he's actually, because in this country, when you're party leader, then it means you're a presidential candidate.
Yeah.
Mwangi Kiunjuri is also coming with the same. What these new candidates ought to demand is a system that assures free and fair elections, so that what goes into the ballot box is what comes out of it, and what goes into the transmission lines is what comes out in the tallying center, in the national tallying center. That is where the problem lies.
Can I ask just a question out of the illustrations that you've given? You know, even if you take a look at a country like Ukraine, you know, when we had you know, that sort of choice, is it that people get so fed up with the system and the way it is to the point that, you know, out comes a savior or whatever from the ashes who's leading a movement, by the way, that is sort of, you know, pushed by the people where they're saying enough is enough. We have tried the elites, we've tried, you know, the big tribes, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah. And so they overwhelmingly vote in this individual such that even if someone tries some little mischief at the ballot box, that the win is so overwhelming.
It's a little Trumpian, yes. I mean, if you think about it.
Exactly, so that there's, you know, even any type of rigging is not enough, you know, to quell these massive votes of people. And I wonder if Kenya is at that stage where we are completely fed up with the way we have been ruled since 1963 to say, look, we've tried it your way. We've tried the big elites, we've tried the big families, we've tried the big tribes, we've tried all of these people, the ones with money, the ones who are politically and economically connected, that, you know, we have, you know, candidate
including the
X,
ones that are so educated.
including the ones that are so educated that you say, look, you know what, enough is enough, let's try something different. Yeah. And all indications right now, for me, tell me,
business as usual.
We are not, yes, we're not there yet. Kenyans are not tired enough to say, let's try something different. To answer your question,
guys, let's add a little.
We probably tired. Joe, if I can just quickly comment on what Yvonne is saying. We're probably tired, yes.
But not enough.
But Kenyans are not Ukrainians. If you look at Twitter, for example, you would think we have the most active civic base. You know, we always have hashtags, remove Governor so-and-so, out cabinet secretary, Uhuru must go, Raila retire. You know, you would think there is some energy.
Yeah, there's some bubbling under.
There is none of it. It's false. That energy ends the moment the battery of that phone goes off. That is how our politics is. The politics in this country has been changed by the poor people, the lowest of the masses, the people that go to Uhuru Park, the people that fill Uhuru Park to the brim. They are not Twitterati, they don't tweet. They are real people who actually leave their homes in Kibra, in Mathare.
They can wait for 10 hours to vote, actually.
And wait for 10 hours to vote. Those are the people change has been depending on in this country. And those are the people who have not been getting the results that they're looking for. You know, they vote and then they're told by, go back home and wait for the results. And accept and move on. The problem in Kenya is that disconnect of the so-called middle class. And if you saw what Donald Kipkorir, lawyer and very, very active on social media, did yesterday, is to suggest a government.
Yes.
In which he was deputy president, I think.
Yeah.
And who was president?
I think. Was there Mohamed Balia somewhere in there?
I think it was the finance minister or
yes,
something.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
So on the big
position.
political issues,
Yeah.
comparing Ukraine, France, and us, we are very childish.
But
especially online.
ladies and gentlemen, before we go, interesting developments in Jubilee. I mean, the deputy president seemingly coming out from somewhere, hustle ni hustle, Gashuri, there's something like that, where he's giving goodies to different kinds of Kenyans out there. The president pushing very hard, Kazi Mtaani, and today meeting all the county commissioners and basically trying to rally them to push this very hard out there. And at the same time, we have seen what's been happening in Jubilee, whereas there is a split, but we still haven't seen anyone else come up that probably might be the challenger of William Ruto, should he stay in Jubilee as we know it. Jubilee Asili notwithstanding.
I look at the two questions. One, Kazi Mtaani, and hustle ni hustle. Today, so the deputy president, as he has done in a few last days or weeks, meeting groups of young people, distributing various things to help them in their hustle, be it salons, be it catering, be it car washes, and so on and so forth. And the videos are there to see. I think this is an attempt to appeal to the heart and to the mind, and to some extent to the stomach. Yeah. So that
those things are very, very directly
connected.
connected.
The heart and the mind. So that at the end of the day, you will say, when we had this kind of a situation, you assisted us and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I also look at what the president is also talking about. But on this one, the sustainability. How many people can you reach in terms of this distribution? You will reach a number of people, and they will be assisted, and they will always probably be grateful for what you've done. The question now is how much you can do it. And I had the deputy president talk about the reasoning behind these hustle ni hustle, and he had a very interesting soundbite. Here it is.
It is everybody's hustle counts, irrespective of the size. Yule mtu ambaye anauza kiosk, na yule ambaye anauza mboga sokoni, na yule anaendesha car wash, na yule ambaye anaendesha saloon ama catering kama Julia hapa na kundi ya Ana, hawa pia hiyo ni biashara yao, na inatulazimu tuwashughulikie, kwa sababu hivyo ndivyo wanaendesha maisha yao, wanasimamia familia zao, na hiyo ndio usawa tunatafuta katika taifa letu la Kenya.
By the way, did you see Eliud Owalo there? You remember his slogan? Yeah, he was there. You remember his slogan in Kibra? Naliwe Liwalo.
Exactly.
I don't know whether he has now said Naliwe Liwalo. He's now
Interesting.
to be interesting to find out why he was there, but it's obvious. But also, there's another question related to Kazi Mtaani. The president today met county commissioners and regional coordinators and told them to safeguard the 10 billion shillings that will be distributed to thousands of youths who are targeted by this process. And this brings to mind the Kazi kwa Vijana. You remember that story? And the NYS cohorts.
Kazi kwa
Very
Vijana,
noble initiative.
Pesa kwa Wazee.
Yeah, the Kazi kwa Vijana, Pesa kwa Wazee that time. Very noble initiative that is meant to, bring some money to ordinary folks, especially at this point in time. But the question is how these 10 billion shillings will be managed. Because there's a possibility of a very good initiative turning to a serious scam. And if you allow me, here is what the president was saying.
This is not a process of trying to get kura for one person, one MCA, one MP, one whoever. No. This is a process of ensuring that we assist the most vulnerable in our society during this particular period. And those must be the people. And I will follow very closely because this is something that is very close to me, it's very dear to me. As I've said, I've seen its impact on the lives of young people, especially here in Nairobi. And that is the same that I expect to see across the country, the impact being felt by those young people. This is what we would like to hear in all our sub-counties. That because vijana wale ambao wanatusumbua wako engaged, there's less crime. Because this 10 billion shillings is being used in the best possible.
Good ideas. I mean, whatever the deputy president is doing is interesting. Whatever the president is talking about is also interesting. The issue now is sustainability, one, and proper management, especially for these public resources. Because if such a noble initiative as Kazi Mtaani will end up being abused and we create scandals, then, and by that 10 billion shillings is your taxes and my taxes. So if it is well spent, good. If it is not well spent, a loss on all of us as a country.
My worry is sometimes pesa kama hizo, you've said 10 billion shillings.
10 billion.
10 billion shillings inaweza kwenda ikakuwa pesa ya campaign kwa mtu. As you say, in this country, we have very good initiatives, but how do we see them to conclusion? Do we actually see the benefits of some of these great initiatives? I think we are done. Lenas?
Yeah, I want to just ask. We're seeing Kivutha Kibwana, Alfred Mutua, and a number of other candidates.
Peter Kenneth.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see the handshake candidate, you know, the one that comes out of the Jubilee NASA thing. It would just be very interesting to see who that would be, if at all, you know.
The president said his choice will surprise us.
Yes, that would be interesting.
Okay.
No, just a quick one on Kazi Mtaani versus
Hassoni
Hassel. To me, it's just another demonstration of the dysfunction of the Jubilee administration, where you have the president and the deputy president sort of running competing programs. If the deputy president, for example, is running the Hassel straight from his pocket, I believe, it's not funded by...
It would appear.
Yeah, I think it's straight from his pocket. Again, there lies another problem about our Kenyan politics. You see, people ought to get to power so that they use the instruments of the state and the power of government to change lives. It's not about the richest giver. It shouldn't be about the charity, the most charitable of people that then gets to office. There's something that seriously also speaks about our politics. And that's why you see the pressure for members of parliament. Just ask any member of parliament what they go through in the village. They always come under pressure to give, donate, contribute, and all this. And in the process, that's how corruption comes in, because the demand is higher than the supply. I don't think we should approach governance that way. It's not a charity organization. It's about programs. And in programs, you now get access to billions in taxes, for example. What do you want to run healthcare with? It's not about what you donate in person. It's also about what you run as a state program to change lives.
An enabling environment.
Absolutely.
And by the way, did you guys see Millicent Omanga, the nominated senator there?
Amefanya nini leo?
Hamkumuona hapo? She was there, and she said something very interesting. I don't know whether Roba is still sufficiently philanthropic to play that bite.
Kuna vijana ambao wamereform, walikuwa wanaiba na wanafanya vitu mbaya mbaya, lakini wamekuja kwa vikundi na siku ya leo umeweza kuwaonekania na ukawasaidia waweze kupata biashara ambayo itawapea chakula yao ya kila siku. Uncle Willy, tunashukuru sana. Na kusema ukweli, sidhani hawa watu watasahau. Ama mtasahau? Hawawezi sahau. Sisi kwa ground, hata kule bunge, tutasimama na wewe kidete. Hii vitisho itaendelea committees nimetolewa, ni sawa. Borako hawajanitoa uhai, tuko na uhai. Hii injili ya 2022 tutaendelea kutangaza.
This reminds me
Now-
of
Loyalty pledges.
Now you get an idea
call
what.
him Willie.
Yeah,
Yes,
Uncle
Uncle
Willie.
Yeah,
Really?
but now you understand what that whole thing seems to be about, because they will not forget. What are they not going to forget?
Right.
Injilia 2022.
Yep.
Nimeondolewa
Exactly
kwa
what,
kamati,
what,
it
what
doesn't
Linus
matter.
was talking about. That this, at the end of the day, are these people really
In
getting
it.
something from the government, or this is something that is meant to achieve
Yeah.
a particular end?
Wamenitoa kwa committee. Remember, compare that with the disciplinary committee sittings.
Very interesting.
Interesting things in
Tofauti sana.
politics.
Yeah, a month, a week, 2 weeks, 1 day is too long in politics.